Wow, so many people. Good morning, BSidesTLV. Good morning, Stav. I am so incredibly excited and honored to be with you today to represent this beautiful industry of ours. So thank you so much for joining us today to this session of the double-edged sword, where we will be discussing the role of GenAI in cyber security and cyber attack and cyber defense. So allow us first to introduce ourselves. My name is Brokman. I'm a cybersecurity expert at Google Cloud's professional services team. I specialize in defensive security, mostly cloud security, endpoint security, and data protection. And I'm very, very excited, as you can see, to be with you today and share this session with Stav Shulman.
Thank you, Or. Good morning, everyone. I am so excited to be here. I am Stav Shulman, Senior Cybersecurity Researcher for Google Cloud, expert in reverse engineering, tracking, and hunting of threat actors, mainly operating in Israel and the region. To kick things off, let's go over the agenda for today. We'll start by addressing the very obvious elephant in the room. We'll see how generative AI increases risk for organizations. We'll see how it also helps prevent, detect, and respond better, then summarize and conclude. Now, this is not a secret that generative AI is one of the trendiest phrases out there today. And usually, we would just brush it off as another trendy thing. But during this session, we'll give you the actual cybersecurity consequences that are behind this very big buzzword. We'll give concrete examples to where organizations are implementing generative AI in the real world, then see the security consequences from implementing those solutions, start by seeing how they help attackers gain better visibility to organizations, and then how they help defenders become better and better. Let's begin. During this following section, we will be exploring the new and amplified attack surfaces that are created because of organizations implementing generative AI into everyday workflows. In an attempt to try and demystify some of the mystery that had been created around LLM security, I have decided to demonstrate those attack surfaces while relying on some more traditional cybersecurity concepts. We all know that information security had been around for a while and is impacted by many different factors. And during this session, we will focus on 3 of these factors that can be found in high correlation to issues we consider new. Those being security negligence, AppSec, and supply chain. And while none of these are new, we will see how they come to play when talking about generative AI. Now, what if I told you that one of the most impactful aspects on security is actually sitting right beside you here today? Obviously, I am talking about humans, and it's because as human beings, we don't always follow security best practices. This can be the result of laziness, negligence, or even simply the need to deliver our tasks in a timely manner. So to show you just how harmful can human negligence be on security, I have done the following thing, asking a generative AI model to create a Python file server. It should receive an input of a file path, and then this file should be uploaded to a dedicated directory. Within seconds of me making the request to the model, it had provided the code I requested, but it was even kind enough to not only provide me the code, but to also provide me with a path traversal vulnerability in it. So the following demonstration would be of what will happen if I simply copy and paste this code generated by a model. So in this demo, you can see my server. You can see my file that is being uploaded. It's making its way to the dedicated directory. You should also notice, please, that the root folder on the server is empty right now. I could then simply take the same file and without any disturbance, move it to the root folder. It will get there I promise you. Lo and behold, the vulnerability, it worked. So not only did this model just provided me with vulnerable code, but when I asked it if this code was vulnerable, it immediately acknowledged the path reversal vulnerability, along with even more possible security risks. So the takeaway from my case, never, ever blindly trust or take for granted code generated by a model. And even if you have decided to do so, please make sure to use security mechanisms we already know from writing our own code, so processes like static code analysis, for example. We've just seen how human beings can play a very significant role when it comes to secure usage of generative AI. We'll now be reviewing the world of the LLMs from an application security point of view. And it's because just with any regular applications that might receive input that had been tampered or manipulated by a malicious threat actor to kind of alter the expected legitimate behavior of the app, the same method can be applicable for LLMs, where maliciously crafted input can be used to change the model's expected behavior. A vastly growing trend you've all probably encountered recently is the introduction of the prompts into our day-to-day lives. The prompt is our way to communicate our goals and requirements to the AI model to enable it to generate content that aligns with our intentions. Now, those prompts would be different between different organizations that has different needs, but generally speaking, good representative examples could be intricate search bars or dedicated assistants to help with common everyday tasks like coding or taking meeting notes. In this following demonstration, you will see the interaction between a user and a model dedicated to schedule meetings. The user had asked the model to schedule 3 meetings for the following days during business hours, and all meetings were set up perfectly. This is a hard-working user, so he went ahead and searched online for materials for tomorrow's meeting. He just found on Google this incredible graph. It matches perfectly for the theme of the meeting. It takes an image of the graph, uploading it to the prompt, asking the model to summarize the data and attach as a note for tomorrow's meeting. After this image was uploaded to the prompt, what happened is that the model had actually summarized the data, but also seemed to set up this new meeting called "You Have Been Pwned." The user is left very confused by this answer, asking the model to verify the rest of his meetings because they were very important. But it actually seems that all the rest of the meetings were disappeared, and only the one new meeting was left for tomorrow at 3 a.m. called "You Have Been Pwned." So what just happened in this very strange interaction between the user and a model? And this behavior we've just observed is the result of a specific attack called a prompt injection. A prompt injection is when a threat actor has either partial or full control over the prompt, allowing it to take over the current session and change the prompt's expected behavior. In our specific example, the user had uploaded an image. Although it might not be very easily visible to us, it did contain some clear text with hidden commands for the prompt. Once the image was uploaded, it was taken as yet another request by the user to the model, which then in turn executed the commands mentioning it should delete all the meetings it scheduled to this point and should only leave the one new malicious meeting for tomorrow at 3 a.m. called "You Have Been Pwned." So just as we know, with any regular application we're handling, we never take for granted user-provided input. You know, we should never be trusted. So we use processes like sanitization, input validation, and application firewalls. The same has to be applied for the LLMs, where user-provided input can never be trusted either. Now, lastly, we all know that the security posture of any product is as strong as its weakest link. This means supply chain plays a huge role in cybersecurity, including cybersecurity for LLMs. Recently, some organizations began adopting generative AI to implement customer support chatbots. This helps them significantly cut the costs on humans doing the same task. I know it sounds very promising, but I promise you it does come with a price to it. As we've seen in recent court case, Air Canada were held liable to an incorrect answer provided by a generative AI chatbot to a customer. The chatbot promised this customer a discount at a much higher rate than the one mentioned in company's policies. So essentially, this model generated an answer that benefited this user rather than benefiting the company, causing the company to lose money and to lose the court case. This comes to show that AI-generated answers have significance to real-world companies. Specifically, for the case of Air Canada, their models had hallucinated the faulty answer. But this begs the question of, can threat actors intentionally cause models to generate answers that benefit them rather than benefiting the user? One way to do just that is called data poisoning. A data poisoning attack is when the threat actor intentionally introduces malicious, harmful, wrong information into the training dataset of a model. This will cause the model to generate harmful, biased, and simply incorrect answers. The goal of a data poisoning attack can be to either degrade the model's performance, to manipulate its behavior, or even to inject backdoors for further exploitation. But actually gaining the access to a training dataset of a model that is not your own is extremely challenging and extremely difficult. And nobody likes to work hard, especially threat actors, and we are talking about supply chain here. So luckily, today, models are very much available to the general public using different marketplaces. To those marketplaces, anybody can upload their own model that is trained to do anything, trained upon any information, and essentially could have come from anywhere. We should know this already, but the users accessing those marketplaces, they can never know. Who uploaded this model? What were their intentions? What information is it trained upon? What is it trained to do? Or even if it just is simply packaged with a malware. So to give you a sense of demonstration of this concept of distributing malicious models using marketplaces, I have created one of my own. Here on the screen, you can see my coding mentor. This is a model I contaminated, so when it is asked to generate Python code greater than 100 lines, it will inject a small backdoor to the code it generated. Now, you know, this is on the screen now an example of asking this model to generate a simple upload server. If you look closely enough, you might just see my backdoor pinging back to my malicious C2. And now a non-careful, non-suspecting user that chooses to rely on this model because it has great ratings, it has a lot of stars. The user choosing this model, being lazy to write the code, obviously being lazy to verify over 100 lines of code, will just execute my backdoor on his machine because of this model. And so I believe that I could prove to you during this entire section that if we take an overwhelmingly sounding concept like security and generative AI, we could still just simplify it into terms we all know for years. And now, on a more positive note, back to you, Or.
Thank you, Stav. So let's pause for a second and take a deep breath, because Stav was telling us some scary stuff. But it's not all bad. And here comes the good part about GenAI and cybersecurity. Have you heard about the defender's dilemma? The defender's dilemma means that an attacker needs only one successful attempt in order to be successful and achieve his or her goals, while defenders need to 100% all the time, constantly put in the best security tools out there with no margins of error. Attackers need once, defenders need to be successful all the time. That's a bit of an unfair balance between the two powers. And there's never really been a good way to tip that balance. There's never really been a good way to tip that balance between them until today's AI revolution. Let me show you how, via an example of a recent real-life event that happened very recently. Take a look at the picture. You may have guessed it already. I'm talking about one of the biggest data breaches of all times. Let's examine Snowflake. So for those of you who haven't heard about it, Snowflake is a multi-cloud data warehousing platform with hundreds of customers. Roughly 2 months ago, a group of attackers called Ankh5537 was able to steal credentials, access their dashboards, and connect to multiple Snowflake instances. Then they stole the data, used it to sell it in the dark web, and use it for extortion purposes. So here's what happened. It all began with a Snowflake employee whose credentials were leaked via an info-stealer malware. These credentials were later used by Ankh5537 to log into Snowflake dashboards, connect to their customer instances, and exfiltrate PII, personally identifiable information, of thousands of customers. Once again, trying to sell it in the dark web and use it for extortion. Interestingly enough, this breach was successful due to 3 of the most basic, classic, fundamental reasons. Firstly, leaked credentials were not rotated even 4 years after they've been leaked, meaning no passwords policies were in place. Secondly, impacted accounts were not configured with multi-factor authentication. Lastly, the impacted instances did not have network allow lists in place, meaning very liberal firewall policies. So bearing all that in mind, let's see what GenAI has to offer in this case. Let's try to prevent, detect, and respond to a Snowflake data breach, only this time with AI-infused security tools. Starting off with prevention. You see, the problem with prevention is that you usually get distracted. You usually get distracted by thousands of alerts popping at your SIM, demanding your focus. Here's a screenshot of my test environment, which has 14,000 alerts in the past 7 days. Now imagine you are the SOC analyst trying to mitigate those risks. Take a look at the list. Well, it's hard to see, but it says multi-factor authentication not enforced, primitive roles used, public IP used, open firewall, etc. What I'm trying to say is that some are urgent, some are not. Some are plain misconfigurations, and some are critical threat. It's extremely hard for the human eye to capture that and to connect the dots between so many random, allegedly non-related misconfigurations. Yet we know that some of these misconfigurations combined can lead to the biggest data breach of all times. It's extremely hard for the human eye to capture that and to understand it, but it's not for AI. Let's see it. Here, you see a security tool called Google Security Command Center, showing you exactly that. You have a public IP address, open firewall, multi-factor authentication not being enforced, and a service account key that was leaked, simulating the credentials leak. SCC, Security Command Center, is giving you a graph showing you that combined, this means an attack exposure with a risk of 15, where an attacker reaching from the internet can eventually reach your compute instances and connect to your dashboards. It's giving you an AI-generated summary, and it's also giving you with some recommendations on how to mitigate the problem. In this case, where the service account keys were leaked, it's showing us to rotate the keys and disable the account. So that's great in terms of prevention, but let's talk about detection. There are two types of companies: those who know that they've been breached and those who don't know. Snowflake had a credential leak. Some of them were 4 years ago. Let's see how a credential leak can be detected using GenAI. Here you see an email report I got from a tool called Mandiant Data Threat Management. This mail is notifying me that in my Snowflake domain, I have numerous employees whose credentials are leaked in the dark web. Clicking on this link will take me to the full report, where I can see the employees' names, the timestamps, service URLs, etc. In the highlighted record in the red rectangle, you can also see one employee, this is real by the way, whose credentials were leaked via an info stealer, in this case, a malware called RisePro. Drilling down to that, you can see the source URL in the red rectangle that says Telegram. So his credentials were leaked via Telegram channel. Drilling down to the RisePro info stealer, you can read more about it, learn about its IOCs, MITRE associations, etc. So this is pretty cool, but now I need this data to reach my SIEM in order to create detection rules for it and an alert. So how do we do that? On the left is how we used to do that, right? So writing complex detection rules in specific languages, this is YARA-L. So question to this auditorium. Raise your hand if you think you can write a production-ready detection rule such as this in less than 5 hours. I see very few hands. Raise your hand if you think you can write a production-ready rule in less than 3 minutes. Well, with GenAI, you can. This is how it looks like today. This is Google SecOps, allowing me natural language creation of rules. I'm writing in human natural language. Find me all leaked credential events for the past 7 days, and I'm writing, create me a high priority detection alert for it. And to prove that this is not just screenshots, here's the full picture. Remember RisePro malware we saw earlier? This is SecOps, and I'm writing to it. Find me all events related to the threat name RisePro in the past 3 days. SecOps is translating that into a UDM query, searching for it, finding the relevant employees and events, and also showing me all the relevant data. Now I want to learn more about this info stealer. So I'm opening Gemini and asking it, what is RisePro? It's showing me an information about this malware and its relevant TTPs. And now for the cherry on top, I'm writing, create me a YARA rule for detecting this alert. 5 seconds later, there you have it. This is the rule. You can see it, you can edit it, change its criticality, save it, without a single word of code. This is really revolutionizing SOC. So, quick recap. GenAI has helped us to prevent an attack with attack path simulation and to detect an attack using threat monitors and detection rules. Now, it's time to respond to an attack. Here's how I used to respond to the attack before GenAI, using a manual, cumbersome IR scheme. I would have to come up with the flow by myself. I would have to plan it, test it by myself. This is a full-time job. Question number 2 to this auditorium. How many of you think they can design such a playbook in 3 hours? Nice. How many of you think you can design it in 3 minutes? Well, you see where I'm going at, right? With GenAI, you can. Hear how it looks like. I wasn't sure how to create the correct flow, so I asked Gemini, write me a SOAR playbook to detect credential leaks to the dark web. It's giving me an elaborated answer, including enrichment of the data, containment, disconnecting the computer from the network, disabling the account, enabling MFA, etc. This is really good, but I want an answer I can take back to my SOAR. So I'm writing back, write me a one-paragraph flow which is concise. Can I get a one-paragraph concise flow? And here it is. I'm taking this output, I'm validating it first. Stav, it's not malicious, don't kill me. I'm copying it, editing it slightly, and pasting it to SecOps with create playbook by automation. 5 seconds later, this is what you get. Is this beautiful or what? And the results, a few minutes later, I'm getting an email from my SOAR playbook that it completed successfully, the user was disconnected from network, the MFA is now enforced, the account must be rotated since it's disabled, etc. What's the gain? Based on our testing, GenAI can accelerate IR by approximately 51%. And to translate that into money, if identifying a breach is roughly 200 days, and containing a breach is additional roughly 70 days, and now we know that companies that can contain a breach in less than 30 days save more than $1 million in comparison to those who don't, and that companies that use AI-infused security tools can accelerate IR by up to 51%, that's a lot of money and a lot of time savings. In conclusion, AI will not replace attackers, right? And it will not replace defenders as well. But it will become their accomplice and their new right hand. Secondly, it must be deployed in a secure manner, because as Stav showed you, it really includes some new and enhanced attack surfaces. But the good news is that AI is really democratizing security by making cyber defense available to tens of thousands of organizations that had very little cybersecurity knowledge prior to that. Lastly, on a personal note, AI is probably the biggest technological shift we get to see in our lifetimes, just like the shift from desktop to mobile, or even bigger than the internet itself. It's a fundamental rewriting of technology that we get to witness. So we hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank you.